Let's start a new sketchbook. If you've been watching my channel lately, then you know that I recently finished a sketchbook. And that one was a doozy, folks. That one took me forever. And because I worked in it so long, I was a little bit attached. It's really kind of bittersweet and sad to move on. But that's what I'm going to try to do today, folks. It is time to put that one behind me and to start a new one. And one of my favorite things about that sketchbook that I just finished was the completely customizable cover, because I painted on it and I made it my own. And that's how we're going to start this one, folks. This is one by Handbook Journal Co. It's 300 GSM watercolor paper, but this one is much smaller than the one that I just finished. This one is an 8.25 inch by a 5.5 inch. My other one was a 9 by 12 and she was a beast. So it's going to be pretty interesting. I've heard great things about this company, but I have not tried their sketchbooks yet. So I'm really hoping that the paper can hold up to my mixed media shenanigans, because I beat the heck out of my old sketchbook. So here's hoping this one can hold up to it. But we're going to start it off right, and we are going to customize the sketchbook. So that way there I can ease my way into starting a new sketchbook and not feel so guilty about leaving my old one behind. I am going to be using some new paint that I got as well. This is some of the natural acrylic paint by Natural Earth Paint. This is an eco-friendly paint that is made from plant-based materials, so it's an acrylic alternative. You've seen me use their paints on my channel before, but this one is their fluid version, and you know I love me a fluid acrylic. So when they reached out and asked if I'd like to try these, I was like, heck yeah. And I thought these might be the perfect thing to customize my new sketchbook with. So that's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna gesso this baby, I'm gonna try out some new paints, and we are going to start a new sketchbook. So let's get to it. One of the things that really attracted me to this sketchbook is this nice natural canvas textured cover. I think it's going to be a blast to paint, and it has the elastic band to keep it closed. The paper feels nice and thick. It has a slight cold press texture, not a crazy texture. Like, it's not going to make it difficult to get detail, I don't think, because I like to use pencils, pens, as well as paint in my sketchbooks. It has a fun little built-in ribbon for a bookmark. And then it also has a cute little plastic pocket on the back to hold things if you like to junk journal or collage in your sketchbook. And then the inside cover has a place to write your name and the start date and all of that. I'm pretty impressed with the feel of the paper. I'm excited. I think it's going to hold up pretty well just from my first impressions. I'm really loving the color of this cover, but I want to give these paints the best chance. So I'm going to tape this down, and when I tape the cover down, I am taping it to my desk as well to keep it nice and steady for when it's drying, in hopes that it won't warp the cover too much, because these are a fluid paint. Here's my Liquitex Basics gesso that I'm going to be using. But because these are a fluid paint, there's going to be a lot of moisture involved, so I want to give this cover the best chance possible to not warp too much. Now, I am going to be laying down my white gesso, and then I'm going to come in and do an underpainting. But one of the reasons why I wanted to tape the edges is because I love the color of the cover so much. I want to have those natural edges around my painting. So I'm not going to paint the whole cover this time like I did last time. So now I'm coming in with, I believe this was my Venetian red, and I'm just doing a really thin underpainting so that it can show through. I'm going to be doing a landscape, and I like to have a little bit of this warmth showing through in some of the areas, especially some of the grasses that I'm going to have. I'm just laying out where my main components are going to be, but then I'm going to come in and paint in my sky first. I accidentally started out with the purple color instead of my ultramarine up there, so that got a little screwy. And then I'm using mainly like my teal color and the white with a little bit of ultramarine at the top. I'm not going to get too particular over how smooth this is. I want a gradient. I want it to be lighter at the bottom, darker at the top. But I know I'm coming in with clouds, and so I'm not getting too crazy about how smooth it is, because the clouds are going to cover some of that streakiness. Now, initially I'm coming in with my fluid acrylic, and I'm ghosting my clouds in. This underlayer of sky is still a little bit wet, so it's mixing with my cloud color, which I actually really like because it creates dimension in the clouds later on. I like to have those shadow areas in the cloud, and then I'm going to come in with thicker paint for the white caps. Now, To do this, I decided to bring in some of my natural earth acrylics from before, which are their heavier bodied paint, because I wanted to see how well these two kinds of paints work together, and they work great together. So you're going to see me alternate between the heavy body paint and the fluid acrylic just for the clouds. I didn't bring in any of the other colors for the heavy body paint, but this still gave me a pretty good idea of how well they work together, and they worked great together. Now, something about these paints is they can actually work with your regular acrylics as well. So if you decide that you want to go completely eco-friendly and switch these paints, but you don't want to waste the paints you have, you can buy some of these open stock to get a feel for them, and then use them along with your other acrylics until you have used up your stash. Now let's talk a little bit more about this company. This company is a woman-owned and woman-run company. Natural Earth Paints was founded by Leah. She is an environmentalist, a mom, and an artist, and she was looking for sustainable ways to create artwork that were going to be more healthy for her and for the environment. And there weren't a lot of options out there for her when she started looking, so she decided to come up with her own options, and that's how she decided to start this company. They do have a bunch of other supplies as well. They have some oil painting kits and some watercolor painting kits and some solvents and all kinds of stuff like that. I will link their website below, but I just saw that they are now starting to sell their products on Blick, and I am so excited about that. I feel like that means she's gotten more and more established, and I think that is fantastic for this company. They are available on Amazon and on their own website as well. And as I mentioned, they have a heavy body acrylic option as well. And then they just recently came out with this fluid option. And I love a good fluid paint because I'm able to get the fine details I want. So I knew that that would be perfect for this project. Now I am laying in my tree here. I'm using mostly black, and I will be coming in later on with some highlights with my green colors and some yellows. I like to establish my shadows in my trees first and then go in with the highlights after. This is basically a silhouette at this point. But if you know me, you know I love painting me some trees. And so I figured it would be great to start this sketchbook off with one of my favorite subjects. And of course, the sky. I had to have a fun sky in the backdrop because skies are also one of my all-time favorite things to paint. I guess I just love landscapes in general. So far, I think the paint is laying down fantastically for this. I do wish I had put a little bit more gesso down to get a smoother surface. The texture is kind of a heavy canvas texture for this sketchbook. So if you are somebody who likes to work on a smoother surface, like in recent years, I have been working mostly on panels, so I do prefer a smooth surface. You might want to lay down a few more layers of gesso than I did. I think I only did maybe 2 or 3 layers of gesso, but it's still working out. I'm still able to get all the fine details that I want, and this paint lends itself beautifully to that. Fluid acrylics are like just a notch thicker than an acrylic ink. So it's not quite as thin as an acrylic ink, but it's definitely a little bit thinner than a medium body paint. And I like anywhere between acrylic ink to a medium body, so this kind of paint texture is perfect for me, honestly, because it's right in the middle. But if you are somebody who likes more of an impasto technique, you might want to look into using their heavier body paints. But I did find when I worked with their heavy body paints, they weren't as thick as some of the other heavy body paints out there. I found it to be a little bit closer to my medium body paints, so I loved the texture of those paints as well. Something that I noticed with these, though, is that they seem to stay wet longer than their heavy body paints, which honestly is kind of typical. I find that in other companies as well. A lot of times heavy body paints tend to dry a little bit faster on the palette and on the painting than thinner paints do, and this is no exception. This paint seems to stay wet longer than their heavy body paints. So that's something to keep in mind too if you're trying to decide between the two of them. But they do feel very similar to a regular acrylic paint. Now, they call these acrylics, but they're technically not an acrylic because there is no acrylic polymer in them. They are made from plants. So they actually changed the name up a little bit and they spelled acrylic with a K at the end to kind of differentiate it. So it's more of an acrylic alternative for people who have things like allergies or sensitivities to the different kinds of chemical compounds that are found in regular acrylics. And I will also link some resources below from their website that talk about regular acrylics and what is actually in a regular acrylic, because I think we're all under the impression that acrylics are safer than oils, when in actuality that may not be the case. And it can also be dependent on what kinds of sensitivities you have as well. Some people are more sensitive to things that you have to use with oils. Some people are sensitive to acrylics. And so if you do have a sensitivity to acrylics, this might be a paint for you. I had a ton of fun with this. This canvas texture, like I said, was a little bit heavier, but the cover itself handled it pretty well. And I kept it taped down until it was dry. And it was minimal warping, which honestly, it's kind of like working on a canvas panel or a canvas board where it's that kind of cardboard backing to it. And so it felt very similar to just working on a regular painting. Though even with the gesso, it soaked up some of the paint quite a bit. Again, I probably should have put a couple more layers of gesso. But overall, I had a ton of fun with this and I'm really loving it. And it really makes me super excited to work with this sketchbook and jump in and start painting and drawing and exploring, because that's what sketchbooks are for. I am going to spray this down with a sealant, to try to protect it a little bit more. I want to also find a plastic cover for it if I can find one that will fit it. My Jane Davenport one already had a plastic cover that you could buy from Jane Davenport. So I'm going to have to search and see if I can find something for this sketchbook. Now I'm coming through with my oil-based Imuki markers to create a fun gold border around that edge. Sorry, you can probably hear my roosters. And then I came in with a different gold marker just to beef it up a little bit more. But I love it. It looks like a classic old-fashioned book that you could find at a small shop. And I think it gives it so much charm. I love it. I'm super excited. I think with the sky and the tree and the grass, it's super Shanna. And I am going to write my name and Caution Artist at Play on the inside. I'm also going to write down when I painted this sketchbook cover and a start date and an end date for when I actually work on the pages. I love it so much. The paints worked fantastically for this project. The cover held up really well to all the paint. I will link everything in the description. The sketchbook, the gesso, the paint. Please check out the paint if you are looking for a good eco-friendly acrylic alternative. They're fantastic. Look, it's so customized. I can't wait to start working in this sketchbook. That will be coming up real soon on the channel, and I will be sharing the progress as I go along. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this sketchbook cover design. You have a fantastic day. Bye.